conversations that come to you as an afterthought. This is But Seriously, We Mean It.
We're just two curious people with lots to say about anything and everything.
No, but seriously, we mean it. When was the first time you cried?
I've never cried during therapy. I know. That's one of the I want to go back. That's one of the things that I'm just like, I never cried during therapy. And the only time that I actually cried was when my therapist was leaving. She was leaving the country. That's the only time I just cried that, okay, fine, I'm never gonna see her again. But I've never cried during therapy. I don't know why. I don't know why. Okay, I struggle with crying sometimes. I really struggle with crying. And it's been ever since I was a child.
Okay,
a lot of people in my life have never seen me crying. I really struggle. I think I'd rather just have a little giggle.
That is wild.
I know. I think it's also a trauma response. I don't know it's a response to what, but there's definitely something there. Because I always feel the need to be strong in situations where I'm just like, this is BS, really. So, I don't know. I need to start crying more. I think that's what I'm learning from this as well.
True.
I need to start crying more. Maybe just have a cry day.
Okay. I don't know. It feels so good.
It does.
I can tell you that much. It feels amazing.
I do cry when I'm alone sometimes. Like I would listen to a sad song and then I just start crying.
Okay.
Because it brings those. But sitting with somebody and crying takes a lot for me. It really takes a lot.
I'm also thinking about, I'm asking these questions about the setup because there's this idea that we have in our heads. Some of it is informed by the books we read, the series we watch, and how this thing is portrayed. And I often find that with some stories and some storylines, people cannot connect with their therapists or psychologists or whoever's there, the practitioner or Bekiweyo. Can you say, hey man, I ain't feeling the vibe. It's just not a match. How do you know when you've gotten the perfect match?
I think it's something that comes, it has to be organic. It's like relationships. Sometimes you get into a relationship with somebody and you just try and you're like, yo, there's just there's a block. And it's not because the other person is bad. It's not that the therapist isn't good at what they do. Their style isn't necessarily what you're looking for. So maybe somebody is being too formal, which makes you block your feelings. So I think sometimes it's not about the therapist really sometimes. It's really about what you relate to. And if I had a therapist right now and I didn't relate to them, I would just find a better one.
Can I open up about my struggle? I think I'm very in tune with my emotions and how I feel. I cry a lot. Listen, I cry. I do not deprive myself. I cry. And I understand most of the time, I understand what I'm going through. And I'm able to identify my emotions. So if I'm sad, I will get to the bottom of what's making me feel sad. If I'm angry, I will trace back my steps and say, at what point did I switch? And if I'm happy, great, I can easily identify that one. But there's things that I feel are now starting to happen in my life where it's not so clear. Because what I'm learning now in my adult life is not everything is black and white. Sometimes there's that gray area which you cannot categorize or you can't really place. And that's becoming more frustrating for me because I've always been able to say, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm going through this. But suddenly, randomly, out of nowhere, I'm experiencing this ball of emotions and it's unclear to me. So now I'm struggling with adjusting from knowing how I feel, understanding the type of person that I am, how I react to things, and now learning these new patterns that I have never, ever experienced before in my life. And that's when I realized maybe it's time
to go for therapy. I think I think you should go for therapy, actually. Sometimes you need to let go of the control that you think you have. I think it's better if you, because I don't think that we're ever in control. I don't think we're ever in control. So I feel like if you feel like you're always in control, it's going to be detrimental to you in one way or the other. So that's why people need like external forces, like having a therapy session or church for some other people. But I feel like that's the perfect moment for you to go for therapy, because it will show, the person will tell you why you felt like you always needed to be in control. Maybe something happened, or maybe your personality requires for you, in order for you to function, you need to have control.
Oh, definitely. Yes.
And there's certain places that will disrupt your control, or certain periods that are going to disrupt your control, where you're not going to know what's going on.
I am going through a disruptive phase.
Yeah.
I'm going through a disruptive phase and I'm struggling because I've never been, let me rephrase. I cannot remember a time where I wasn't aware of what's happening. When I wake up in the morning, I'm able to say, today I feel blue. Today I feel happy and colorful. But lately, I wake up and I feel nothing, or I wake up and I feel a lot, but I don't know why it's a lot of what. I'm going through a very disruptive phase where, as you're saying, I don't have any control of the situation, and it feels like life is happening to me.
That is so hectic.
It is wild. What are some of the signs that we miss? And you will go through the different phases of our lives. But what are the signs that you need therapy? I mean, you've already mentioned that you think you'd recommend it for everyone. I think that 20s, mid to late 20s, it's a must-have.
Which is where we're at. And I think even for teenagers, man, I really think teenagers, mid-20s, actually, everybody must, I don't know, I feel like my 2-year-old needs to go for therapy right now.
Is this such a thing? Like a professional reach out to us? What does a 2-year-old do with therapy? And
what are they told?
Do you just like try to find color coordination? What can you say about a 2-year-old in a therapy session? And this is a 2-year-old who's just getting accustomed to the culture. Or even if akakwazi uthetha, maybe there's techniques, you know? What does science say? Let's actually read up on this.
I wonder what
because if you take a 2-year-old and I want to create this culture, let's say umntana wami semncinci, and I want to get them used to the idea of opening up to someone and always knowing that they have someone that they can rely on for help, to reach out for help. If we are at that age, what are you going to
Maybe
learn?
It needs to start with the parent. Maybe as the parent, I feel like there's certain households or there's certain families that we've had in our lives where it's so difficult to open up. Like opening up is so taboo. Like, you know, you're starting, there's no stress.
So let's just go back, sum up a number of things that because I think we mentioned one, but like, what are some of the signs that you need therapy? I think I want to go back to what you were saying. Sometimes you'll be at a good place. It's not going to be anything tragic.
Yeah.
You won't feel extremely sad, but you'll just identify that maybe it can be as good as you waking up in the morning and deciding, I want to go for therapy. Just do that. Take that up, I think.
And there's so many different stages of your life where you feel like, okay, right now, there's certain new emotions that I need to bring in. For me, it was having a child. Having a child, it requires you to give a lot of yourself. So if you, as a mother, are struggling emotionally and you are not figuring out your emotions, which is a human thing, but now you have a responsibility to make sure that this person is around positive energy. That is so difficult. It's so difficult. Like when you've had a hard day at work, or on your way when you're going home, you encounter something bad, you almost need to protect that innocent child from the tragedies of what you are going through or what you're feeling, which is so difficult. I think having a child, you need to go for therapy before having. I think there needs to be pre-kid therapy.
Actually,
before you have a child, you and your partner need to go for therapy. And if you're not together with your partner, with the father of your child, you need to go for co-parenting therapy. I would 100% recommend, even for me. I think we need to go for, just so that you know somebody's groove. I think we judge people so harshly without understanding the mental state that they're in. If I have a child with someone and I'm always shouting at them, I don't even know if that person's going through depression. But at the same time, we need to build this household for our child. So I definitely would recommend it for different stages of your life.
I think grief is a big one, and grief in a sense that whether you're grieving for a loved one or you're mourning the end of a relationship.
We take that so lightly.
I think at the end of each journey, when you close a chapter, I think it's very key for you to go for therapy. If you just started a new job, or you where it was toxic or the space was toxic, do not get into a new space with that energy. I think it's very important for you to go for therapy before you start a new chapter. And grief, for me, those two things
the grief part. And I feel like in so many of, especially when you lose a parent, there's that thing of don't cry. Don't cry. What are you doing to the person that died? And you're just like, okay.
Can I just express myself?
Yes. And relationships, you need to grieve relationships. I was asking myself this recently. I was asking myself why it takes me so long to get over a relationship. And I realized it's because I always have this thing, okay, no, let me just get on with my life. And then when I have to get into a new relationship, I go back to the old toxic ways of acting. Like if I was toxic in the other relationship, I'm going to go in and be like, give me your phone within 1 week of time.
Did you not learn?
I did. That's the thing. I think we don't learn. So we need to, let's acknowledge our feelings. Number one, let's acknowledge our feelings.
All right. So there's a lot of people now coming up and saying, my therapist said this. Oh man, beautiful to watch. Now my
really
question
beautiful.
Is it a humble flex, or is it showing, or is it a reflection of how the culture is changing and we are now becoming people who are aware of therapy as a way of life?
You know what, I was saying that to you earlier. I think I said it to you earlier in the week. I feel like therapy is always going to be a humble flex because you need money to go for therapy. So the accessibility is really not that much. Not a lot of people can afford therapy. So if you're in a space where you can say, I need to go call my therapist. I mean, when you're chilling with other people, they're like, okay, you have a therapist. But I think because we're normalizing it now, it's so easy for people to just say it out. You can even post it on your social media. My therapist. Yeah, I think it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to watch. It's really beautiful. People are coming out and saying, we are here and we are willing to fix the mistakes of our past and we're willing to mend our hearts. So
I was listening in on a live by, I think it was one of the brands doing a campaign around mental health. And they were talking about, I think it was last year, they were talking about how look within your circles or look within your affordability bracket. So omnye uzewati, sometimes therapy is not speaking to a therapist, but it can be to someone, a local counselor, it can be a umntu ozibekileyo in that space to listen to you. I wonder what the dynamics of those different engagements is. So what sets a psychiatrist apart from a therapist and a pastor and mhlambi umama wecawe othile, can you still say you're going through therapy when you're seeing someone who's not conventionally or professionally qualified to provide those services?
Well, I guess the difference between a psychiatrist and all those other people would be that a psychiatrist is allowed to diagnose you, and they're allowed to give you medication. But I know a lot of people, when I was still young, there was an aunt of mine that would go for therapy at her church. So there is a space, like there's people that offer themselves to communities who would say, okay, you can speak to me, you become that healer. So you don't necessarily have to have the qualification, but people trust you enough to bear their burdens. So that's also another option, because therapy is really expensive. When I was checking out the prices, I was like, okay.
In South Africa.
That's why people say they'd rather buy a bottle of wine.
Okay, back to the affordability thing, because that's a very big one. And I think I also want us to look at how we start imagining therapy differently. Because remember I said to you when we started, I imagined this room, pastel colors all around, a couch, and this person who's looking very zen and very serious, and the tone is very mellow, and it's what do you need today, how are you feeling? But for someone else who has someone in their lives, but they're not so mellow, but they're there to listen all the time, can you start saying, hey, my therapist said this?
I don't know.
My healer,
Yeah. I don't, like, for me, when somebody says my therapist said this, I automatically assume that they're talking about their therapist, like real. But I guess so. I guess your friend can be a therapist. But how far are you willing to go with your friend? Sometimes we don't want people in our lives to know certain aspects of us, because when you're with a therapist, you become naked. So that's why people pay for it.
Let's go for therapy.
That's it for this week. Catch us next time on But Seriously We Mean It, when we have conversations that come to you as an afterthought.